Hi, I'm Kim Santini. We're here in my studio today, and I'm answering some of the questions that came up during my 12 days of gifting that were held inside the free tier of my Patreon at the beginning of this month. And I have a couple of questions from Stacy. Stacy wanted to know what I wish I knew 10 years ago and how I push past fear. And for me, those questions are both, they're interlaced. A little more than 10 years ago, I was incredibly burnt out. I was going through one of the biggest trials of my life. I was questioning everything. My future was very uncertain. When I say my future, my creative future was very uncertain. There was, a strong possibility that I may have had to return to the traditional workforce, which meant closing my studio and my business, which at that time I was painting. Loss of words. I had been painting a dog a day for over a decade, and I had a really strong following and a really exciting community built around that, and the idea of walking away from that was just really, really devastating. But so 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I was in a really dark place, and I also had really big dreams, and none of those dreams felt like they were fathomable. And so if I could go back to, Kim, younger Kim from that time frame, I would let her know to stay true to herself and to not give up. And I would remind her that we all have the power to manifest and bring to life what is most important to us, even when it feels like it's impossible, that we all have the capacity to do that. And to stay focused on the most compelling, biggest loves in her life, and not let go of those, and just really, I would have her back, and I would cheer her on, and I think that as I hear me say those words out loud right now, and I'm filming this at the end of 2025 and setting some goals for next year, and of course 2025 has been challenging in its own excruciating ways, but hearing those words out loud is actually a revelation, and I'm having a physical response to them. So the question, Stacy, was really, really timely, and I guess I needed that little pep rally talk for myself. But one of my biggest challenges back in that darker time was this fear, because fear had crept into every single facet of my daily life, my personal life, my business life, and that fear was really crippling. And I didn't know this at that time, but this is something that I learned recently about fear. And the fear shows up. Fear is a mechanism that saves our lives. And developmentally or historically, generations ago when we were cavemen or whatnot, fear elicited a fight or flight response. And it happened when our lives were in danger. When that saber-toothed tiger, we could hear it coming at us through the woods, or when there was this crazy lightning storm and we needed to take cover. Fear told our bodies we needed to take action in order to save our lives. So fear is a survival mechanism, and fear is something that tells us we need to make a choice, right? And we can sit in fear and not make a choice, and that's basically accepting the current situation. That's not changing anything. Or we could sit in fear and we can make a choice as to how we're going to live with that fear. Are we going to face it, or are we going to stare it down, or are we going to change things in order to minimize it? And the recent thing I heard was just so incredibly brilliant. It was from Elizabeth Gilbert, who's one of my heroes. And she was talking about fear specifically in the act of creativity. And Art and Fear is also another great book on this topic. But fear is something that artists talk about quite a bit in the context of being creative, in the context of taking risks and building our art. Fear shows up, and it can be crippling. It can be paralyzing. It can stall a project immediately because the artist doesn't want to risk the preciousness of their idea or of what they've already created. And so Elizabeth Gilbert is talking about this aspect of fear in the face of creativity. And she said, all you need to be is 1% more curious about finding the answer than you need to be fearful about the situation. So if you can be 49% afraid and 51% curious, now you're moving beyond the fear and you're giving yourself space to elicit that change or take that first step. All you need to be is 1%. 1% is a very tangible, realistic thing. And I've adapted that, not just in my creative life, but in my personal life as well. When I'm sitting at a crossroads and I may be afraid to have that difficult conversation or to enforce a boundary, all I have to think about or remind myself is I need to be 1% positive, more curious, more excited about what's going to be on the other side of this obstacle right now. And that makes the decision all the easier. So I hope that you find this helpful, Stacy, and anyone else listening to this video as well. Thank you so much for your great question and for being a part of this community.